everyone, and we are live. I will be joined in a little while by a fellow author. It will be her, I think, first co-live experience, so hopefully we'll welcome her in. She's running a little late due to some traffic issues, so no worries there. But for anybody who's out there, how are you today? And I hope you're excited to talk about some books and writing and everything in between. So just so you will know, again, these are my weekly authors chats typically, or just a fun way to talk with fellow readers or authors out there about all the things we love. And usually that is books, fantasy, everything in between. If you're interested in anything pertaining to publishing, writing, again, I'm a fantasy author, so I know a little bit more about that than some other genres. Just let me know. I'm always happy to kind of answer any questions along the way. It's, I think, always a great resource to be able to talk with fellow authors or writers, depending on where you are in the process, because it's a great way to learn about a little bit of everything from each other. I know when I started out, I had one of the biggest issues kind of just beginning with the writing process, and that was because I didn't know what I didn't know, so I didn't know the questions to ask. So if you're one of those people, I understand. There's a lot of things that go into being or attempting to be a self-published or indie author, because that's what I am. But sometimes some of my guests on here are small print or vanity press, or even now some that have had the opportunities to work with some of the bigger publishing houses. So that's always fun to kind of, talk about our different experiences and help answer any questions along the way. So I see some of you are kind of popping in and out there. Hello, I hope you guys are doing well. If you are a fellow reader, I always like to know what you are reading at the moment. And for me, I had just started The Song of Achilles. So if you heard that, that's a book that's been, I guess, fairly popular here on Book Talk. And I was highly curious because one of my backgrounds, I love ancient mythology. So The Song of Achilles is kind of covering the Iliad. And I am that weirdo who has read the Iliad multiple times, the unabridged version. I know that's terrifying, but that's me. So I was really curious about the book Song of Achilles. See, I keep wanting to flip that up. And starting to read it right now. Now, what I will note is I do have a bias. I realized pretty early on, I'm not sure how much I like those first-person books, kind of point of view, because that for me is jarring. I do not write that way. I typically do not read that way. So getting into a book that is a first-person narrative is a little bizarre. So I'm trying to get over that hump and get into the story a little bit more. Okay, let's see. Jessica says, I'm struggling which book to read next because there are so many to choose from. That is always the case. If you do videos here on Book Talk, I know some people have fun ways where they'll allow their followers to help vote. That's a good thing. That might be scary too. Yeah, no, you didn't really like Song of Achilles, unpopular opinion. Hey, that's it for everybody. And the thing is, not every book's for every person, and vice versa. There's a book for everyone. You just have to find out what you like. I love mythology, so I'm really hoping I will like it, but I will see. I kind of mentioned before that retellings are fairly popular right now, and so I also have Circe on the sidelines, along with A Forest of Vanity and Valor by a different author, A.P. Beswick, who's here on TikTok, and he writes retellings of British folklore characters. So his first book, A Forest of Vanity and Valor, is a retelling on Robin Hood. It's supposed to be a little, I think, grittier, a little darker twist to it, so I'm excited when I do get to that one. But yeah, when you're choosing your next book, I mean, decide if you like, whoop, pause right there, I have my co-host. Hello!
Hello. Sorry, I'm finally here.
Yeah, no, I was just answering a couple questions on my end about how to choose your next book. I don't know if you have any methods you do when you choose your next book you want to read.
Oh goodness, I stick to almost the same genre. It's a problem. It's always fantasy romance, and so it's like if I've read this author before, absolutely going for it. If it's not someone I've heard of before, but all the same people review that person, I'll go for them too because they probably like the same stuff that I like.
Yeah, see, okay, that's very good. I try to read a little bit everywhere, and so but I do tend to go to epic fantasy and dark fantasies because that's again what I like to write and read, and it's just the way it is. So you kind of have to trust your gut in the end. Okay, so
Mhm.
how I usually do this, since you're on for the first time with me, is I'll let you talk about your books a little bit, and then vice versa, because people will chime in on your end and my end, and they may not know each other. And then from there, we'll just talk about books, fantasy writing, and everything in between.
That sounds great. I'm here for it.
Okay, so okay, for everybody who doesn't know, let them know about you.
All right, so my name is Abigail Manning. I am a fairly new author. I first published my first book in November of this past year. I'm up to 4 books now published and 1 box set. So that's kind of where I'm at in terms of writing world. I write fantasy romances that are retold fairy tales. So if you ever read the Lunar Chronicles, like Cinder and Winter and all those books, it's like that, but mine are clean. They're definitely more like something that your parents could read over your shoulder and not feel ashamed about. But they're still really suspenseful and adventurous. So they're really kind of fun. They all have an interconnecting world. So even though it's a different main character and they can be read as standalones, they're actually best enjoyed in sequential order because characters come back and they face the same villain multiple times over again. So that's kind of what I write. I just write some cool fairy tale retellings. I've got more stuff coming out, but that's kind of the gist of what I do. And when I'm not writing, I'm a nanny who chases toddlers around, and that's why I'm running late, is because one of them didn't want to go down for nap today. So
Hey, it's hard to wrangle children sometimes. You know, they are little people and they have their own minds. But
yeah.
okay, so let me ask you, what is the name of your first book? Because if anybody's going to start on one of your series, we need to know what it is called. And for anybody who doesn't know, you should check out her book covers. They are gorgeous.
Thank you. My first book is called Poisoned Heart. It is a Snow White retelling, and the whole series is called the Emerald Realm series.
I like that. Perfect. Yeah, no, I was right before you logged on. I was just kind of delving into the concept of how retellings are really popular right now. And I'm just starting the retelling Song of Achilles, so I was kind of rambling about that one to see if I like it. I know a lot of people do, but not everybody. I mean, that's the case for most books, so crossing fingers, and we'll see where that one leads. But
I've heard a lot about that one.
as for me, again, I am an epic fantasy author. I range from young adult, new adult, and adult, depending on my series. So be warned. Don't just make sure you know which age bracket you're about to get into. Because my books for older people are separated because I like darker, grittier stuff. So they are more violent. While my young adults just adventure fantasy. It's a portal fantasy and it's a lot of fun. Of my 3 series, I have kind of my thing in the back. I'll kind of do my little point around. The Jed Chronicles is my young adult series. I have 2 books out now. And again, young adult adventure portal fantasy set in a multiverse with 12 magical planets. It's a free for all sorts of magical entities. So that one's just a lot of fun for me. My debut series is a 4-book series called the Incarn Saga, and it's a war shifter fantasy series about a kingdom that's about to be pulled into a war, and the native population of shapeshifters known as Therimore, and the humans have to kind of decide if they can put aside their differences to help fend off this upcoming evil. And my final series, The Guardian Speaker at the moment, is my dark Viking fantasy novella series for adults. You get to immerse yourself in Norse mythology, and again, based on Norse mythology, it is really dark. It is going to be gritty. There is some subtle romance, but it's definitely not a romantic story. And exciting news, it is going to be turned into audiobooks really soon. So that's in the process, and I have some fun announcements about that in the weeks to come. That's my
That is so exciting. Oh, that's so cool. I cannot wait to do audiobooks someday. So that's awesome for you.
It is, a strange thing to get into and an expensive thing to get into as an author. So that's why I avoided it for so long. But there are a lot of people who seem to benefit or prefer it, be it, you're too busy and they, listen to books on the road or driving, or, snippets of time, wherever you can plug in your earphones. And then there are other people who I actually had someone I reached out to me who says he has issues with seeing, and so the only way he can read, if it's not Braille, it's through audio, and he prefers audio. So it is kind of an interesting thing to think about, that will potentially reach other audiences. So yeah. So let me ask you, what got you into writing? Like, what inspired you to do these retellings, to get into the world of publishing?
So it actually all started almost a year ago this week, which is so funny. But a year ago this week, says a nanny, occasionally I'll get random weeks off work when the family goes on vacation. And so about a year ago this week, when it was the last week of June, they were gone on a week for vacation, and I was just left to my own devices, bored out of my mind. And I'd been reading a fairy tale retelling at that point. I was reading the Kenley Davidson series, the Jed Chronicles, which are really great. If you ever want to read a good retelling series, hers are really good. But I was listening to it on audiobook, funnily enough, and was really just into it. But at the same time, there was parts of it that like I didn't fully love, and I'm like, oh, what if they had done this, or what if they had done that? And so I just kind of sat down, opened up a Word document. I've always been interested in writing. I almost went to college for an English major in creative writing, and then backed out when I saw I'd have to take a foreign language, and then noped right out of there. So I completely switched everything and just forgot about it, and then sat down, started writing, and just fell in love with it. And I just made myself write every single day because I was like, I'm gonna finish this. Like, who cares if it's good or not? I'm gonna finish it. And then I finished it in a couple months, and as soon as it released, I was just hooked. I was already like starting my next series. I was planning 3 series in advance. So I have no formal training. I have no formal education specifically in writing. I just decided to wing it and have loved it.
Hey, that's fine. And sometimes, I mean, you have to understand a lot of it, at least my personal opinion. People can correct me if they think a different opinion, but a lot of it is stuff you pick up as you go, in the sense of your writing style will get better the more comfortable you are at writing. I know for me, early on, I think one of my weaker points was dialogue, but now I'm pretty confident with my dialogue in my newer works. So it's one of those things that you can teach yourself to some extent, the process of writing and publishing and everything in between. But you just have to start. And that's the thing, is a lot of people are scared or shy of starting out. And I don't know, I think you should just start and figure out, do something for you, because there's going to be someone who appreciates what you appreciate out there. You just have to figure out how to reach them.
Definitely. And it's hard to look back at your first book sometimes after you've done so much of that change, and then you're like, ooh, did I really write this? Was it really like this?
Oh yes, that is. Well, thank you. Okay, I had a comment here from one of my viewers, and saying she's proud of both of us. So there you go. See, that's the thing, is like authors unite. But yeah, it's one of those things, you just have to get over that hump of fear, and sometimes you just have to write for yourself. There are people out there who write with a set group in mind, which is perfectly fine as well. I definitely write for me. So there you go. And it kind of makes sense. You said you read that kind of romantic fantasy, and that's what you write too. So makes sense.
It does. It just fuels your mind. You're sitting there reading, and you're like, oh, I like that. Maybe I should do something like that. It just inspires everything.
Yeah, so let me ask you, so once you wrote your book, how did you decide what route did you initially try to take to publish? Did you go immediately into, I'm doing it myself? Did you query? Are you indie? Are you, what press, how, just tell me the whole background.
So right now I'm completely indie right now. I'm all over Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. But when I first started, I was like deer in the headlights, like, oh my goodness, how publish, how do this? So I actually had a friend who is self-published. He's self-published on Amazon, and I reached out to him like, "How did you do this? Like, what did you do?" And he like sat down and gave me the whole spiel. And then I had another friend who she's actually an editor, and so she told me what people go through, and I learned all about querying and about getting traditionally published, and was completely like terrified of like trying to write a cover letter and trying to get it all done. So to keep it simple, I did publish like just through Amazon, just through Kindle Unlimited. And now that I've kind of had a little more experience, I have started querying agents for my second series that is currently, the first book's done and I've got the rest plotted. So I'm very hopeful. I've already gotten 2 rejections, so hey,
It
but
happens. It happens. It is
it
a
does.
lot of rejections before you can get some, yays.
Yeah, so I'm hopeful, but we'll see. If it doesn't work out, that's okay. I can always just keep self-publishing. So, but the hope is to one day get traditionally published, but we're just starting out.
Hey, no, I'm with you. I would love to be a hybrid author down the line where some of my series are traditionally published, but some I kind of have that full control of being as an indie author. I think that's like the sweet spot for me. I have some comments here saying, I write fantasy romance and I love it. I went with a hybrid publishers. Okay, see, there you go. But yeah, no, that would be my dream, would be to try to do that, but with the knowledge that the big houses do follow trends pretty well, and they're pretty kind of, if you don't fall in that trend, they're not going to look at you this time, which is one of the things you have to understand. It may not be your quality of writing. It just may not be what's trendy in their view, and that's what it is. But you could be lucky too.
I
And
know, that's
fit
what
perfectly in
I'm
there as well. So it's
hoping for.
it's not a bad thing to at least try. I've tried to query a couple times, but I knew my stuff wasn't on the nose for trendy. It's, again, I write for me, and I do like some odd storytelling approaches sometimes. So I think that's fine.
And I think that's what's great because if you write for what you like, then that's probably going to be way better work than if you try to like meet a mist like a genre or something that you know is popular. Like I just feel like if you don't, personally for me at least, if I was trying to write something that I knew was popular, like if I tried to switch to thrillers because they were into it, it would be terrible. It would not be my good work. No one would ever want to buy it.
You never know. There are a lot of hello from Alaska. Anywho, yes, no, you never know if you try to jump genres, but it is going to be a big change. It will be a big change. And it's one of those things I wouldn't advise it unless you start really reading it and getting used to the parameters of a genre, because each genre does have parameters, and once you know them, you can choose to break those rules or stay with those rules, but it's better to know them and know what you're doing. And so for me, I could see down the line potentially I breaking into some more of the spicy romance, but I would have to do a different pen name and I would have to be a little more familiar with that, or maybe branching into sci-fi. But again, I would have to have a different pen name and be a little more familiar with that. And at the moment, I'm not. So I'm going to stick with my epic fantasy because that's my comfort zone right now.
Yes, I'm the exact same way. It's like I love thinking about the idea, like maybe one day I could try and dabble with historical romance. And I've read one or two, and I'm like, there are so many rules to this. It's it's very intimidating.
Yep. And that's the thing. You have to be comfortable with what you write as well, and that's, I think some people who like the idea of writing and publishing and try to force it too much and maybe are trying to broach into what is in demand right now. And that may not be what's the best approach for them because that may not be their comfort level, what they're used to. So stick with what you're comfortable with in writing. At least that's my opinion.
Yes, I fully agree.
Okay, so you have 4 books out, and you said you started in November?
Yeah, so technically I started writing in July, like first week of July, last week of June, kind of then. First book came out in November. And yeah, I just released my fourth book this weekend. Yeah, this weekend on Saturday. So my fourth book just came out. It all happened in a blur. So
Well,
um
that does happen.
yeah.
Well, that's exciting.
Well,
4 books. That
thank
is
you.
such an accomplishment to do. And within the first year, whoo, girl, you were going far faster than I did when I started.
Thank
I
you.
was like a 1 book a year, and that was hard enough for me. Since then, I've gotten better at it, and now I'm publishing multiple times a year. But woo, 4 in 1. That is an accomplishment. And happy year anniversary for a writer slash now
Yeah.
author.
It was perfect. I just finished a Christmas novella that I was working on just yesterday. I'm like, oh, I just finished. It was my ninth manuscript that I finished this year, and so it was kind of like I almost made 10, but not quite.
Oh
But
yes.
it was a lot of fun. It was also my horror piece, not horror like literally genre, but it crashed midway through on Friday, and I lost 16,000 words in 5 minutes, and it was completely gone and vanished. And so I retyped all of it this last weekend and finished it because I was so mad about it. So
Oh no, I've had a glitch like that before. I have a comment saying very impressive production. So, and I don't know. Sometimes I'll admit, sometimes the screens we both can see each other's, and sometimes I only see comments on my end and vice versa. So I never
no,
know
I saw the
how it
Alaska
works.
one. That's it.
Huh? Yes.
I saw the Alaska one, but that's it.
Okay, so yeah, it may be also who's following who. I wonder if someone's following both of us. Maybe that's it. Again, don't know. I need to figure this out because it'll make more sense. But
That's
I
true.
also always kind of try to note them aloud because I'll put this on YouTube later and people will be like, what's going on? Because they won't see those comments. Anywho, okay, so 4 books down, a Christmas one. That's your ninth manuscript. So may I ask how big are do you have like a size parameter on your books
Yeah,
or your
so
goal?
most of them, hold on, I can grab one.
Yeah, show us.
Let me just grab the stack while I run from my puppy before he notices that I moved. We're good. Okay. Phew. Okay, so this is the first one. So this is they're 70,000 words each on average, but so they're not super duper long. They're perfect young adult length. This is the new one that just came out this weekend. This is a Thumbelina retelling. So they're pretty thin, honestly. I don't get how people make their books so thick and then still have them be like kind of the same length. I think they just format it differently than me, and I'm jealous because I want the thick spine someday. I got to figure it out. There's a secret to it, I'm sure.
Well, for
But
me,
they're all just 70,000.
oh yeah, for me, I'm kind of I need to challenge myself to write more moderately because I branch from my full lengths, which are huge, to my novellas, which were challenged to write small, and I got that. Now I have to find the happy medium because I go from I honestly don't know how many words my novellas are. I just know they're about 100 pages, but my full lengths they are around 140,000, 170,000 words. Like they're meaty books.
That's amazing.
I'm a
Great job.
long-winded storyteller, so
Oh, I
apologies.
love it. That's great. That is so impressive, honestly. My longest book that I've done is 80,000 words. And for me, I'm like, this is so long. How did I do this? So that is hats off to you. That's impressive.
No, but I think that I think the sweet spot right now for at least adult books is like around that 100 page, 90, 100 page, and so that would be my goal. Would be probably if I do another series, try to aim for that. I don't know how. I have to like wrap my head around this because for whatever reason I go into a rhythm and I know exactly where I am in the story and it's bizarre. But well, that's cool. Okay, so that's neat. That's so exciting. And I love those covers again.
Thank
Beautiful covers.
you. They're now sprawled out across my legs, but they're here.
So, where did you decide, or where did you get your cover designer? Because that changes widely depending on the author.
Yes, so I did some digging to find my cover designer. So when I first started reading retellings, I read Kelly Davidson, and then I read Melanie Sellier, and I read Camille Peters. And if you don't know these names, they are all fairy tale retelling authors. And I absolutely loved their covers. So I was such a stalker and dug through their social medias and dug through all of their websites until I found who they used as cover designers and found out they all used the same person. And it's called Art by Carrie is her website. And I looked her up and I found her prices and I sent her an email. Like, I'm like, she must be working with like publishing houses or something with all these people. And she also works with independent publishers. And sure enough, got her signed up. And now I have 4 books, or actually 5. The 5th one's also designed yet; it's just not out yet. 5 book covers done by her, and they all match the same genre. And I just think she's amazing. I love her work. Will forever speak her praises. That she's the reason my books sell.
Yes, and that's the thing is, you should never. You shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but people do. People do.
They do.
And so you kind of have to be competitive with your book covers in whatever genre you're writing. And so, but yours are very gorgeous, so I will acknowledge
Thank you.
that.
I love your covers too. I keep looking at them. I'm very distractible, but those are so
Oh yeah,
pretty.
they're really small in the background, but yeah, no, it's one of those things. And people, whoever you are, and if you're trying to put out a book, make sure you do your research on cover design. Figure out what's popular in the genre, and try to mirror it while being unique, which is the tricky part.
Yeah, very.
Okay, so your books are, you said Kindle Unlimited, Kindle, do they have print? I mean, obviously you have print versions, so
Yeah.
paperback. Have you attempted hardcover? Because I know Amazon started doing that recently, so I just got into the hardcover side of things.
They have, but funnily enough, one of these days I'll get it fixed. My first book is forever glitched by Amazon, and I cannot change anything in it anymore. And I've tried to work with them a half dozen times, and the reason why it's glitched is because I used Kindle's Create platform, which is made by Kindle, but it is not compatible with Kindle, and it bugged it all out. And so unless I unpublish and republish it, which I'm afraid to do because I feel like I'm afraid I'll lose my reviews on it, I haven't done enough research into it yet.
Personally,
So
I think
maybe
you
someday.
will. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just reached 50, so I'm very terrified to do that. So I cannot make a hardcover on my first book. So if I did, I'd have to do it for all of my books except my first book. So no, I have not done it because Amazon and me are not really best friends.
Okay, Amazon, get your stuff together, because no, there are definitely sometimes I hear these moments, and I think it happens with any platform, honestly, if you're publishing, but there are those horror moments where something just doesn't work, and for an odd reason, and I hate that. I feel so bad, but understandable, but it's nice. Hey, I like reading print, and honestly, paperbacks are easier to travel with. Hardcovers are beautiful on the shelf, but paperbacks are just lighter to travel with. And since I am not an e-reader, paperbacks are my travel companions.
Are you a spine cracker when you read a paperback?
Oh, I try not to be. It's so hard. Like, depending on the book, some are more fragile than the others. But no, I actually try not to, which makes the reading even harder because you're trying not to. And I've seen some like interesting tips, especially on this platform, on how you can avoid cracking the spine. I am skeptical on some, so I have not tested them myself.
I know it's a very like controversial topic where some people are like, "Oh yes, it must be well worn, it must look loved," and other people are like, "Don't you dare, don't touch it." So
Yeah, no, with me, like, especially if someone lends me a book, I pay very close attention saying, what does it look like right now? And if, they do have fractures in the spine, I don't want to add to that. So I try to give it back the way it is. So that is one of those things. I'm very conscientious about that. So,
that's
okay. So
awesome.
going back to your stories, you said the first one is based on Snow White. So what are the others then?
It's a good thing I grabbed them. So yes, the first one is Snow White. That's Poisoned Heart. The second one is a Goldilocks retelling, and that one is called Barely Free. And she's got a big old dog named Bear in the background, and he's my best friend. He's based off a real dog in real life, so not my dog,
I
but
love that. I
one
love
over.
little tidbits.
He's also white, so he looks completely different than this dog, but he's very funny. The third one, which is under my foot, is a Cinderella retelling called Framed in Florals. And that one is Cinderella, but if there's a murder at midnight.
Oh,
And that one's one of my favorites. I love that one. And then the one that just came out this weekend is Stolen Crown, and it's a Thumbelina retelling, which
ooh.
follows the story of Thumbelina, but not with her being a tiny little sprite person. She's a full-size person, and it follows every other element about the story except for that she's not super tiny. So
Interesting.
those
See,
are the
there's
four.
a twist. There is a twist.
Exactly. Well, there's a lot of twists in that one, but I'll let them find them out. That one's got a lot in it compared to the other one.
I like that. Well, I think with a retelling, you need to do that, or else it is just repeating something that's already been there. So you have to come up with a good twist, whatever it is, or take something that's maybe obscure and bring it to light. Because technically, I guess thinking about it by default, my Norse series, which is really dark, I have to figure out how to pop those covers a little better. But it's actually a retelling of an obscure Norse myth. So, a retelling, you just change it up a little bit and, tweak it. Like for me, it was inspired by, I think it was just a handful of lines in different lore. And I just took those handful of lines and I'm making it 16 novellas. So talk about plumping things up.
Oh, that is so cool. I love how when people use myths to retell things. Like Greek mythology has been done a lot. Like obviously for, Percy Jackson being the forefront, but there's been a lot of people getting into like Irish mythology lately too, or like I haven't heard of Viking mythology in books, which is really cool. And I love that people like look at old stories and revamp them. It's just that's what I love about retellings.
Well, I think in the world of mythology, not mythology, world of fantasy, um, that's the core of most modern myth and fantasy is the older lore, because Lord of the Rings. Tolkien was inspired by Norse myth. You'll have anything from C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Martin, Robert Jordan. They're all inspired by some kind of lore or myth or folklore, and they just essentially are just fantastic recreations of some of these older concepts. And I guess the same thing for fantasy fairy tale retellings. You're taking a story that is iconic and been around for a while, but now repurposing it and showing it in a new light.
Yep, and it's so funny because one of my favorite things to say was people like, "Oh, what inspired you to do favorite fantasy or fairy tale retellings?" And I'll say, "Well, I'm just like Disney. Disney's a retelling platform," and they're like, "What?" Like people
And
don't get it. Like, wait, they did it first, but they're retellings.
mhm. I was gonna say, even things like Lion King, that's a retelling, but that's a retelling of Hamlet. So
Right.
yeah, they're all retellings, at least originals. They may have slipped some new novel stuff out there, but a lot of the old school animated stuff are just fancy retellings, which are cool. I mean,
Yeah, they're still cool.
I liked Disney. I was a Lion King person
Always
myself
do.
growing up.
I love Disney. No dissing Disney. Just saying we're all the same to some degree.
Okay, so for you, you just said you released your fourth one, your Thumbelina one this
Yes.
past weekend. So as a younger, newer author, what do you do when you do a release? How do you promote yourself? How do you let the world know? Or do you kind of slip it in there and just see what happens next?
I definitely was a slip it in there with my first two books because I didn't know what I was doing. Just like, oh look, I read a book. You should check it out. But after that, I kind of figured it out. I just really like dive into the social media platforms. I've got a Facebook page. I've got a Facebook group. I've got Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest boards that I try to promote. Like everything, everywhere. I've been jumping into podcasts. I'm doing a radio interview tomorrow. Like everything that I can find that is like get the word out there. So I really don't do one thing. I just find things that work and I just dive into them as much as I can to try to promote them before they come out, when they come out, and keep them kind of up in the air after they're out.
I like that. No, I definitely feel like this platform is a great way to get the word out, because there are so many readers here that are just looking for the next book they want to discover and the next big thing before it is a big thing. So it's a nice platform to just say, hey, look at this. This is new. Come and read this. You'll like it. Please like it. I hope you like it, you know. But yeah, no, I mean, yeah, definitely when you're doing a release, and I'm having a release next month, but it's not really a new release. It is a box set release. So it's kind of repackaging what I already have out, but because it's all my novellas, it'll be the first time some of them are in print, because being a novella and being so teeny, I didn't want to do the tiniest of, little blips of books. I wanted them to, like you said, have a little bit of a spine. So that's why I'm bundling the first four together, and we're releasing them in the first box set next month. So working on how to like spread the word, and there are so many different ways to do that. So
That's cool. TikTok's such a good platform to where, like you said, like there's so many people that you probably wouldn't have come in contact with otherwise that are just looking for the next read. So it's a good place to be.
yeah, and it's one of those things, people just like you to be you, and you don't have to be, you don't have to dress up, you don't have to like, unless you want to. I mean, you could dress up. I like dressing up, but I'm just saying you could just be you and be real, and people are drawn to that. So that's always fun. But yeah, so for you, okay, so how did you, when you put out your first book, what did you create like a Facebook next? What was your next leap? Did you go into, do you have a website? Actually, I didn't ask you that. Do you have a website?
I do have a website now. I did not have one when I first started. When I first started, all I did was make a Facebook page for my it's called Abigail Manning Author. It still exists today. But that was all I did. That was the only thing. I was like, I know how Facebook works. I'll do Facebook. I think actually made my Instagram that same day too, but I completely ignored it until I think January. So it was there. It just wasn't really there. And so I do have a website now. I started my website, I think also in January when I really actually figured out how to market. It's abigailmanningauthor.com. So super easy to remember. And that's kind of where it all comes back to, where everything can be found is right there. So I was very bad at marketing until after my second book came out. So my second book is my neglected child, I always say, because everyone will read my first book because they'll be interested to know where it started. But then I never really marketed my second book, so everyone kind of skips that one and goes on to the other ones for some reason. So
Well, I guess that's one thing I've found out from a lot of people who do write either romance, spicier kind of stuff, or retellings, because almost each story could be independent, though a lot of times people have that underlining, you're in the same realm, they do cross paths concept, like you were saying, the same villain sometimes. You could almost read them out of order independently, though I'm always a person who's like, read them in order. There is probably a sub method to that madness.
yes, for sure. There's definitely like my fourth book that just released. If you were to read it as a standalone, which I guess you technically could, I wouldn't recommend it. There is a major spoiler for it in the second book. But also the twist in the fourth book doesn't really have as much impact unless you read the first and second book because there's characters that come back, and if you're just reading the book you're like, oh, it's just this person named this, but if you read where their origins come from, you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I know this person. I know this horrible thing they did. And why are they trusting them even though so and so did
Yeah,
this? So it's definitely, there's a reason to read them in order for sure, for pretty much all retellings or even interconnected storylines.
I like that. Yes. So you're saying, also going back way back, you were talking about another series that you're potentially querying. Is that another retelling series, or can we know?
I mean, I don't think it's really going anywhere anytime soon, so I'm not afraid to like at least say what it's about. Because worst case scenario, I'll just publish it myself. But I am trying something new in the retelling world. So as I mentioned, I'm a nanny, so I spend a lot of time with kids. So one of the things I do all the time is sing nursery rhymes. So I decided to retell nursery rhymes and see if I could build an entire fantasy story based off a retold version of the Itsy Bitsy Spider or Little Bo Peep or All the King's Horses and All the King's Men. And so it is a six story series that I already have plotted. The first book is already written. It's called The Itsy Bitsy Liar. And so it is hopefully going to make it on someone's desk in a traditional publishing house someday, but we'll see what happens. If not, this is going to be my first marketing for it. Hey, check it out. It might be published next year if I don't get it traditionally. So we'll see what happens with it.
Well, crossing fingers for that. That's kind of cool. I actually trying to remember. It might have been a young adult book. Maybe it was middle school. I'm trying to remember middle grade. How far back I read this, but I have read a retelling of It was like Jack and Jill Up the Hill. That one.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so
Well,
cool.
I read this book and it was like the sweeping epic and it was this venture and it did have some kind of Nordic undertones that pulled me in and I got all into it. And then at the very, very, very end, it revealed itself that it was just a big retelling of that nursery rhyme. And I was like, whoa, my mind is
That's
blown.
so cool.
I can't believe that. I got tricked. Oh, and it stuck with me because I was just like, I cannot remember the name of it. Can't remember who wrote it. But that concept that I got swept into this giant tale. And then right at the end, they're like, ha, this is actually the story. And I was like, what?
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. I love that. That is such an interesting way to do it, to like not tell them it's a retelling and then pull the rug out from under them at the end.
Oh yeah, it was like last couple pages, and it was like, and forever their story was recounted by this, and it was like blah, and I was like,
Oh.
oh, I see now.
See, I'm the opposite. I put the nursery rhyme at the beginning of the book.
I was
So
like,
like,
oh, that's that, yeah.
to see if people will pick up on the parallels throughout the book. So we'll see. Maybe I should just put it at the end, although the title would give it away, so that wouldn't do me much
No,
good.
I think that's fun for yours because I mean, obviously you're catering them as retellings, and
Mhm.
I like the idea of putting a little poem in there to start off with. But yeah, for me, I do epigraphs in the beginning of my Nordic series, and each of them are, quotes from one of the old sagas or one of the old poetic eddas, kind of, and they all kind of tie in some thematic way to that particular novella. So it's kind of fun to do the research and being like, okay, this one works, let's do that. Okay, this one's cool because it talks about the giants. So since we're going to Jotunheim, let's put that one in here. And so that's kind of fun to do. It's just a little thing, and some readers obviously will just pass it by, not even thinking of anything of it. But I think those are just little cherries on top sometimes.
And it's so fun to use this as inspiration too. Like I loved when I was doing my Thumbelina story because most people don't know the original like Grimm's Tale of Thumbelina or just how many like characters are in it or how many twists and turns are in it. And so it was so fun to be like, ooh, there's a frog. I can make this character a frog, but like not a frog. And like, ooh, there's a beetle. Let me throw in a new character here and make it represent that. So it's so fun seeing how many things you can like use to relate back to the original story or use quotes or something. And even if people don't notice it, it's just fun to like inspire you and keep you moving forward.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. That is kind of cool. Well, so that's neat. So going to the querying part, because if anybody watches this after the fact or now and doesn't know much about the process, it is an animal in and among itself. It is a whole different thing you have to learn. There are formats for query letters and applications. So what did you do to prepare for that process? I know the first time I did it, I probably was not prepared, so that didn't help the fact. The second time, I took a lot of research and got someone to help me kind of build my query letter, but I wasn't on trend. So
Mhm.
it is
I
what it is.
definitely Yes. I definitely waited until I was fully researched to make sure I knew what I was doing because I was terrified. Like, what if I like offend one person and they tell the world and no one will talk to me? So that was my subliminal fear. So I ended up just really researching and I watched a bunch of videos on it. I read a bunch of articles and then I went to Query Tracker, which is like the big website where there's all the agents. I'm sure you've heard of it. And just dove through. I looked up all the ones that were accepting young adult submissions and submitted like 10 of them a day for like 3 days. And now I'm just kind of waiting to see, like, okay, who's going to dump me to the side? Who's going to, nope, they're all just going to dump me to the side. But at least we'll see how long it takes. So,
And it's always good experience because if you are passionate about writing, you're going to write another series even after that one. So each time it helps you learn a little bit more and get better at it. And eventually, hopefully you get it. But either way, crossing fingers for you. I hope you get some good news down the road. It is a stressful process, a long process, but in the end, I think it's worthwhile to try because there are a lot of benefits for having your own literary agent and getting repped that way. And again, that's my goal at one point to have someone rep some of my stuff. Obviously, I have a couple series I'm publishing simultaneously. Need to get those done before I do anything else new. At least I tell myself that because I have so many stories in my head that I'm like, oh, I really, really want to get there, but I have to finish these. Write faster. There's only so many hours in a day. Hello,
sorry.
puppy.
He's 10 months old who just stepped on the remote. Buddy.
Oh,
Oh, goodness. Sorry. He just realized I was home. Hey,
oh,
bud.
that's
But
okay.
yes, so
Everybody should have a writing buddy in some form, and my dog is sleeping in the other room right now because she's old and always tired at this point. But everybody, I like
Aw.
those little furry, or it could be feathered or scaled or whatever, but some writing buddy.
Yes, for sure. I have quite a few of those. I've got two cats and a monstrous 10-month-old puppy that's trying to chew my fingers, but it's all great.
Yay, puppy. Let's
Oh,
see.
goodness. He's very
Aw.
needy.
Have a note that says, hello, ladies. Patience and compassion always rewards you at the right time. So there you go for the concept of pursuing your dreams and keep working toward it.
I appreciate it. I'm very hopeful, but also try to be very realistic at the same time. So we'll see.
I mean, it's always one of those things you hope for the best, prepare for the not the best. I wouldn't say worse, but like, because
Mhm.
it's not a worst case scenario if you self-publish. You have a lot more control and there's a lot of benefits
Oh, yeah.
of that. So, but it's always good to kind of like plan for that in the background. And so you're not waiting around and then from 6 months, because sometimes it takes 6 months before some of these people respond. 6 months down the line, uh, you're like, oh, now I have to start prepping everything. So it's not bad to have things kind
Mhm.
of prepped in the background.
That's true. And I love rapid releasing. I love releasing the books like really quickly. And I know if I ever did a traditional publisher, they would definitely space them out a lot more. So it's like, I mean, it would be a give and take, but it'd also be really nice to not have to like out of pocket all the editing and cover designs and marketing and have to worry about it as much. So it's like,
Oh, yes.
it'd be so nice.
Yes. Okay, I have a comment and it says, actually, question saying, how do I go about writing my life story? Here, see, do you have recommendations on how someone should begin writing and getting into, even if it is more autobiographical?
I mean, I would definitely say just start with like plotting out the important parts and like, I mean, I wouldn't just include like, that one time at a fifth grade birthday party when I spilled milk on myself, unless it was like a really big monumental moment. But like, I would definitely just say like piece it out into big parts that you want to kind of put together that you feel like would make the story or make the autobiography, and then just kind of like fill in the blanks from there. And honestly, for me, I'm definitely more of a pantser than just a plotter, where I'll just kind of like dive in and just kind of lightly plot and see where I'm going. So I'm not the best for advice on plotting. I definitely am just like, oh, just go for it. Just pick up a keyboard and start writing. So, I mean, if you're inspired about it, by all means, it will
See?
probably come easy.
And that's the thing, like, sometimes you just have to sit down and start writing. Especially if you're new at it, just sit down and start getting into it at some point. If you are trying to do a kind of oh wow, I can't even say that right now, autobiographical story, one thing I would suggest is, just as anybody else researching genre, is read a bunch, select a couple popular ones, go through, read some autobiographical books, novels, and kind of get an idea of what other people consider important points, what other people consider pivotal moments in their life, and to what extent do they write some of the fun, cute stories, and kind of have a reference. I think that's always good to kind of have a basis reference. Okay, a comment saying, writing down events that make your life and you as a person. Yeah, okay, yeah. So all the important parts that make you, obviously incorporate those. But
For
I
sure.
write fantasy, so I have yet to try to delve into the real world.
My
So
life would not be interesting enough for it. So,
my suggestion is limited. I mean, I have some fun stories that, I think about. I'm like, man, that would be kind of fun to like tell as a tale, but I don't know. I might have a bad habit and start making it a tall tale, and then all of a sudden it's not a biography, autobiography. It is pseudo fantasy. Yeah.
exactly. Right. Or based on a true story instead of, a true story.
Okay, so let me ask, what is some of your favorite retellings that inspired you as a retelling author?
Ooh. The one that was the one that I was reading that encouraged me to want to start writing was definitely the Kenley Davidson series, the Undari Chronicles. Specifically, the one that I love it's called Pirouette, and it's a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses. And I loved it. It was so good. It's got lots of magic in it. It's got lots of like adventure, kind of murder stuff. The whole concept is it's the 13th princess, and she is magic is banned from their kingdom. It's like you're seen as a slave if you have magic, and she ends up having magic, and so to keep her from dancing ever again and be hidden, they actually break her leg so she can't dance anymore. So she's a cripple who's also a princess, and it's kind of like hiding in the shadows of the castle. So it has to uncover all the family history and everything, and it's so good. I absolutely love it. I highly recommend it to anybody, but the whole series is great. So the Andari Chronicles is definitely amazing. I love the Luna Chronicles with Cinder and I haven't finished Cinder yet, so far I just love Cinder, but I've heard so many good things about it. I know the rest is going to be great. I'm an audiobook listener, so whenever I bounce back and forth between audiobooks, it takes me a while to finish them. But I love that one too. They're all good. I just love them all.
Okay, I have a comment that says, personally, I write fantasy and I do add funny real life moments and pranks, etc. into my work. Well, I think that's one thing is, I know I've incorporated real life isms, things like that, moments of real experience in high fantasy. I don't really base characters too much off real people, but I do take some personal experiences and incorporate them in for characters. Do you ever do anything like that, where you take like your own experience and kind of weave it in your story?
I definitely use people as examples, or like I'll put like real people in my stories that I'll ask them first, or they'll ask me. So like in my Cinderella story, my kind of fairy godmother character, who's also a barmaid, is based off my sister, because she loves Cinderella, and she was like, "Can I be in your book? Can you name it after me?" And I'm like, "Fine, but I may or may not kill you." She's like, "I don't care, just put me in there." So I've definitely been known to do that, and I won't base like the character off of them necessarily, because like they're like the character in the book is far more snobby and rude, and my sister's like the sweetest person ever. But it's more like their description, so it's easier to imagine what they look like. So it's like, okay, I know they have green eyes, I know they have this color hair, and so on and so forth, and their names and things like that.
Well, for me, I will admit, here's my minutes, my young adult fantasies, the Jed Chronicles. They are based off of this whole multiverse my sister and I invented in our childhood play as little kids. So they're the only books I've written as of yet that have characters loosely based off people. One was my alter ego. So the main character is Katie of Earth. And yes, I've written myself as a main character because I can. And then
Do
the other
it.
one is my sister, but it was her more of the point traits that I wanted to get across versus what she is. It doesn't look like her. She is a little more. There are a lot of sister moments, at least for me growing up, where the girls butt heads because it's based off my sister, and so sometimes I channeled those moments where you just have sometimes those arguments and kind of frustration when people come across and just don't see eye to eye. So some of those things I incorporated in to that series, but for the most part, yeah, I have not really done that. I have been asked because I do tend to write dark fantasy in my adult stuff, and I had someone who was acquaintance of mine come up and was like, "Can you unlive me in your book?" And I was like, what? No. And she was like, "I want you to write me in and unlive me," and I'm using the TikTok word for it because being PC here,
Good
unlive
thinking.
me in the book that you're writing. And I was like, let me think about it, because I just don't fit people in. I have to let them kind of come out of the story organically. So maybe in the future there'll be a character that would fit her personality or her look or whatever, and I can unlive her for her request. Weird request when you're an author. I don't know. What was the weirdest? Have you had a weird request where someone's just like asked you something and you're like,
Yeah, actually, I had a whole scammer incident when I first started, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I accidentally hired a scammer, and I had a friend who basically solved the problem for me because he was super techie. And so I told him as a thank you, like, I would gladly write you into my book as a character if you want. And he goes, "All right, fine, but I have to be a villain, or I have to meet a terrible end." And I go, "Why not both?" So that was his request, and so I threw him in there, and he is one of the main characters in my sixth book.
oh, that's so cool. Okay, came up and says, I have a character that's a writer, and she has one funny line for those who aren't nice to her. Hey, you know, why not? But like, no, that's the fun thing is, as authors, yes, I'm collecting fun little author shirts, nerdy writing stuff, and so there are a couple shirts that I have talking about, the idea that if you're not nice to me, I'm going to put you in my book and do something not nice to you. That's how we invent. I mean,
Yeah.
what else are we going to do? If you're mean to me or one of my friends, I might have to like just channel that into a moment of my book. Why not?
I just got a couple comments. I got one that says from the same person, that is an odd request, talking about the someone asking you to live themselves. And another one said, I can't put real people in mine. The world is too dark, underpopulated, and cruel. Too many dark cataclysm events. It's probably a good reason not to put people in your books if that's what's going on.
True. Yeah, no, I'm definitely, again, for my older works for older people, I do let people know I write dark fantasy. When it gets to the new adult and adult literature, that's because they are grittier. They're not
Mhm.
necessarily the happiest worlds. If you want happy, I have my young adult series. It's just fun. There are stressful moments. There's going to be, yes, someone may not make it through all the way in, but it's not what I would consider dark, gritty. So
Yeah.
there's something for everyone.
Oh yeah, which is honestly a great thing because right now I pretty much only cater to like young adult, teen young adult. They're
Yeah.
sweet. So when people are like looking for like, who is there going to be like something a little more intense? Like, not yet. It's just because I'm a marshmallow and I'm afraid of gore, but that's just me. But there's people who do love that. They love getting into it. So that's great that you can do both. I love that.
No, I mean, and that's the thing is you have to, whoever you are has to be comfortable with what you write. And I do
Mhm.
read dark stuff. So sometimes I write dark stuff, but I also read some light stuff. So I like to write sometimes. And it also can depend on my mood. If you want to be happy, don't write something dark. If you're, maybe you're a little moody, then maybe there's the line. Oh, okay. Okay. Um, okay. Sorry. Frog in my throat. So, my, I guess, wrap up questions, because we're getting close to the end of the hour. Is there anything that you would like to tell people about you, your books, any questions that you have?
I guess just my elevator speech is that if you like fairy tale retellings that are clean and sweet, then by all means check out the Emerald Realm series. I'm a really fast writer, so my next book, even though I just released one this weekend, is coming out in August. So if you're one of those people who really likes to binge, I got you covered. So if you're afraid to get into a series because it's going to take 2 years to come out, that's not what I'm here for. So that's kind of my big like sell on my books is that like I'll get them for you. You can read them soon, I promise. So that's kind of like that's me in a nutshell. I'm very simple. I guess my big question for you is what would you tell people if they, who are looking to write, like what's the number one tip I guess you would give them? That's always a good question, I feel like.
That is a good question. And my go-to response, there are plenty of advice you can give. My go-to advice is honestly, if you will want to pursue becoming an author, one of the best things you can do is start building your platform. So start getting followers and subscribers, even if you haven't published yet. And I wish I did this when I started out, but even if you haven't published yet, start talking about, getting people excited about your writing, kind of do little writing checks along the way, find one or two social media platforms to get on and start being seen and heard. And the same thing is, get a newsletter going. Even if you don't do a website, a newsletter is great because then you have their full frontal attention to your releases and what's your upcoming projects, etc., so on. So start that now. So when you publish, you already have readers waiting. And that is one of those tricks that I'm like, I wish I did that.
Me too. That is such
It
good
is
advice.
still an uphill battle, but I wish I did that.
Me
How about
too. That's
you?
excellent.
What would be your
Oh,
answer
that's
to that?
for me, it's always just right. Like even if you think it's terrible, even if you think no one's going to read it, just right. Because even if you're right, even if it's terrible, even if no one reads it, you practiced and you got better and you learned from it. So my advice is always just write and just keep writing until you feel like you're where you want to be with it. And because you won't be an author if you don't write. That's
Exactly.
my biggest tip usually.
Exactly. And you have to understand there are very, very, very few authors out there that get it on their first try. There are some.
Mhm.
God bless you. But
Yeah.
there are very few. Even some of the greatest authors, the most current competitive authors out there right now, had to get rejections, a lot of rejections along their way. So everybody has to start somewhere, and just writing for practice is a great option. Getting the word out and having some accountability people to be like, where are you in your writing? Oh, I haven't touched in 2 weeks. You should probably get back to writing. I should. That's a good thing to have. I One last pop-up said, good advice. Thank you both. You're welcome. That's what we're here for. These little chats are here to just, let people interact, learn, get excited about writing and reading and books and everything in between. Well, thank you for coming out today. And I will be I usually try to post these the following week if possible, and I'll share all this out to the ether out there. But yeah, let me know when you get your next series, starting to be published out there, be it, the publishing house or indie. Let me know and maybe we can have you back.
That sounds great. I would love that. Thanks so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Yay, thank you. And until next time, guys, happy reading.